Good evening. Am I speaking? Okay, great. Good evening, Cedar Falls, and welcome to tonight's committee meeting. I call this meeting to order, and we will start with a roll call from Madam Clerk.
Schultz.
Here.
Latta.
Here.
Cruz.
Here.
Hallbaker. Here. Canfield.
Here.
Chrisman. Here. Dunn.
Here.
All members here.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Tonight we have a presentation for the Finance and Business Operations Committee regarding the CIP capital improvements programs, and that will be given by Director Jennifer Rodenbeck.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Just good evening to everyone. Just wanted to let everyone know we're just going through the CIP capital improvement program tonight. Just really, I'm going to start off with some introductory comments, like normal, maybe just highlight, you know, a handful of projects, really just that the public might be interested in, but then obviously give time if there's questions that any council persons have, and if I can't answer them, if it's a specific project, obviously we have people here from other departments who can answer them. I know we always like to invite the planning and zoning members here tonight, so I know we have at least one member here tonight, but we always like to invite them because, you know, oftentimes they're maybe the first people who might see a project, so just like to invite them and see if they're interested. So just gonna kind of get right in the intro. So on the schedule is a little over 200 projects on the CIP for a total of $467 million. We have about 50 different funding sources. I know last year we had some discussion about kind of designating funds that are not really city funds. They're maybe outside funds. So I just wanted to make a note in here that those again on the CIP are noted with an asterisk if they're not city funds. And so those represent about 162 million of the 467. So city sources represent 305 million. Obviously, there's a lot of different funding sources. That's why we always put a key in the back. It can range from sewer rates to local option sales tax to general obligation bonding, all kinds of different sources. And just a reminder that the CIP is a planning document. It doesn't authorize or fund projects. Funding of projects will be coordinated with the annual budget process. So even though we say it's the FY24 to 29 CIP, we are trying to do a 5-year plan. But the column, really FY24 is really already happening. And then the FY25 column is probably what we would consider the most important in terms of getting direction, because then we would put that in the budget as we work on the FY25 budget. And then really 26 through 29 really is just plans, things that we're trying to put a placeholder on, things that we think are going to happen or want to happen, and where do they kind of fit. Also just a reminder that on the CIP, I will say almost every, because there's probably some exception, will come back to the council, every project in some kind of form, whether that's a construction contract, a design contract, a 28E agreement, a grant agreement, whatever it is. So again, the CIP doesn't necessarily authorize the projects, it's a planning process. So the CIP was drafted with some goal setting objectives in mind. Big one being issue replacement debt. So you'll see on the CIP that was in your packet that we usually shoot for our financial policy between 3.5 and 4 million. And you'll see in the CIP right now we have 4 million for 24, 26. Now 28 is a little higher, and you'll hear a little bit about it later because of a fire truck replacement. But again, that's a plan right now. You know, that doesn't mean we're gonna have to sell those. The 24 would be ones that we would sell here in the near future. You'll also see, you know, we also looked at infrastructure maintenance. In goal setting, there was discussions about, you know, what's funded maybe by general fund savings or TIF dollars or economic development funds. So that's part of the CIP as well. And then, of course, we always want to look at quality of life projects. We understand that there's lots of things we need, streets and sewers, but we also understand that everyone wants this community to have quality of life projects too. In your packet was also, we kind of showed what is the effect on the property tax rate. So I'll mention that later too. But again, just wanted to kind of know we kind of built the CIP based on some directives we heard at goal setting. Things that affected really the CIP last year and then really carry over to this year. These are some major projects that really impacted Main Street, We all know the story. Costs were higher and all that. Cedar River Rec Project, Aldridge School Connection, those are things we added in that really use a lot of our GO funding. The high school pool, the Unidome renovations, those were just kind of a lot of the big projects we were trying to work around. And I think that, you'll see in the CIP that because of high prices, whether it was the river, Main Street, whatever, is that also caused some projects to be slid back. A perfect example is Union Road. That's a perfect example that we ended up having to last year slide that back, and really the same thing for this year. I think also sometimes the projects that often make it to the unfunded list, which you would have seen in your packet too, is a lot of times the sidewalks and trails, because they're funded primarily by general obligation bonds. And so when we're trying to use GO for some of these projects, those tend to be some of the smaller projects that get pushed back. So that's just some intro. And like I said, just want to highlight a few projects that I thought might be of interest to the public. I know for the council, most of you have probably heard about a lot of these projects already, but just a good quick overview on them. So number 23 on the CIP is our ERP, or our Financial and Human Capital Management Software system. So we know that we are in need of a new system. We've just started that process. The council had already approved a contract for a vendor. We know that it'll probably be an 18-month project. We're going to start with hopefully financial first and then moved into the human capital. And so on the CIP, it is shown as a $2.8 million project. GO money and data processing revenue was for the upfront costs, and then you'll see on the CIP every year we have a subscription-based cost that we have to pay for the software. By the way, I'm just going to kind of keep moving in case people, but if people have questions, let me know. Her center expansion on the CIP, you'll see that the timing of that is FY 26 through 28. Right now shows a total project cost of $8.3 million. Also on the slides, just for your benefit, the funding amounts, I should have mentioned this, that are city funds, I put in bold. Things that would be external funding then are not in bold. So you'll see of the $8.3 million, there's private funding of $2.4, foundation money of $750,000, federal and state funding of $1.4, gaming grant, and then you'll see some city funding of GO money, general fund savings, and the culture improvement fund. You'll also know with her center, and I want to say Birdsville Park too, that people might remember the House File 718. One of the changes was also that our GO cap went up from $700,000 to $910,000. So you'll see on some of these quality of life projects, that's where the GO might have jumped up a little bit from last year, because we know we can use that cap. You'll hear, I know the design work was FY 26. I know there's a private fundraising effort going on for this project as well. I think we're looking at 28% for the private funding source. I know one of the things we talked about at goal setting is if this project doesn't happen, you'll see on the unfunded list in the CIP is actually a lot of improvements for the Hearst Center. So if this project doesn't happen, then we know we have other projects that we are going to have to get funded on the CIP in terms of maintenance issues. Unidome renovation, again, a lot of conversation at goal setting about the Unidome. One of the things that you actually have in front of you tonight is, unfortunately, because of the timing of goal setting and having to get the CIP in the packet, on the CIP right now it still shows the $2.5 million, but in front of you at your seats, I did provide a sheet that shows the $3 million. I know at goal setting, you guys talked about the $500,000 in FY 27. So I see that as one thing right now that, based on the council's directive at goal setting, we would make an amendment to the CIP based on that we heard at goal setting. So that's why I just put the sheet in front of you, so you could have it there to reference. Also in goal setting, a lot of conversation about different plans. So you'll see on the CIP, a lot of these strategic plan, comp plan, parks master plan. So just did a summary here of when they're on the CIP of what year. So you'll see they kind of range from fiscal year 24 through FY 28. And again, I know council spent a lot of times prioritizing these, and then I know for a lot of these, we also talked about having a special work session to discuss some of those too. But at least wanted to highlight, I know there's been some public interest in some of those, so just wanted to highlight where those fit on the CIP. Birdsell Park, you'll see the timing of FY '26 through '29 with a total project cost of $1.8 million. Some GO funding of $910,000, and then some other city funding, cell tower lease income, hotel motel tax, softball player fund, equaling $370,000 of that project. This is actually the first year that we've gotten Birdsell Park on the funded piece of the CIP. It's actually been on the unfunded for a while, and you'll also notice it's not the full amount. We did leave some on the unfunded for some amenities. We just didn't think we could probably get the whole amount on the funded list for this year. But again, you can see that we tried to be creative in terms of using a whole bunch of different funds to try to get, I think we heard some interest in Birdsell Park, that we feel like those improvements need to be done, so we wanted to try to figure out a way to get it funded. So it is on the schedule for the first time. Annual street repair program, I just always like to bring this up because obviously we just had in the election too about the local option sales tax. So just want to make note that we always have this in our CIP using that local option sales tax funding. In the CIP is actually some other things along with lost is also GO and some that we put in there in case we have to have right-of-way acquisition that needs to go with it. There may be some utility funding, because again, as we're working on a street, if we need to repair the sewer, water, whatever, we want to make sure we're doing that all at the same time. So again, the total is $28.4 million over the, I guess it'd be 5 years on the schedule, so we're using our local option sales tax for that. Project 130, the Highway 58 and Green Hill Road intersection. You'll see a total project cost of $60 million, with the city putting a match in of $4 million. You know, I think this is all, well, first of all, it does show using local option sales tax. It could qualify for the TIF funding, but we're not sure that our unified TIF is going to have enough to cover this, but it also kind of depends on that timing too. With our TIF, some things expiring, that also might cause a challenge, so that's why we put local option sales tax for the funding. I think still in negotiations with the state on this. I think they're hoping for public hearings in spring of 2024, and obviously would be looking at the different alternatives, whether it's under, over, noise impacts, land impacts, all of that. So, and I think looking at a construction of 3 years, so.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Director Rodenbeck, if I could, on the $60 million, is that a ballpark guess? Where are we funding that money? And is the $4 million pretty close to a good speculative number, depending on what model the DOT goes with?
I think that's our hope, but no. I don't know, Chase, if you have anything you want to add to that.
I think that's still yet to be decided. We just seen some preliminary numbers, and generally, yes, around the $60 million mark, but original conversations stemmed around the $4 million for a local contribution. So,
Cool. All right, thanks.
I think that the conversation, though, should that this is not a totally funded project. In my guess is the DOT will come back and ask for additional monies at some point, and that will be up to the council whether they want to entertain those. So,
Thank you.
Okay, 136 Prairie Parkway and Viking Road intersection, so FY '24 to '26 with a total project cost of $4.7 million. It is all in the Pinnacle Prairie, so we're able to use that TIF dollars for that project. It is the three-legged roundabout, and it's currently under design with Snyder and Associates, and construction to begin in late 2024. Number 161, Searley Park renovation. Timing 24 through 26, total project cost of $430,000 with $100,000 coming from a private fundraising effort. The project will have new shelter, restroom, upgraded playground equipment, inclusive elements, fencing, signing, and again, I think looking for construction in the summer or fall of 2024.
Director Rodenbeck?
Yeah.
Did you say restroom?
Oh, yeah, is that not correct?
Oh, I hope. Is it correct? That'd be awesome.
no,
Okay.
the current plan does not have.
Okay. I was hoping, but okay. Thank you.
Took off what was I bullshitting? I must have wrote that down wrong. I didn't mean to get you excited about that, right? So number 190, I mentioned it briefly earlier about the replacement of the aerial truck. It is on a 30-year rotation, so that would be the year FY '28 is when we're at the 30-year mark. I think you heard us talk a little bit about goal setting. The problem is if you want to do something in '28, you actually have to give a lot of lead time, 2 or 3 years of lead time to do that. So we talked about, well, do we try to shuffle some funds into some earlier general obligation bonds, 24 and 26? But I know there was some discussion about, or do we try to delay it a couple years and try to extend the life a little bit? So right now, we continued to just show the full 2.1 million in FY '28, but we know those are things we'll have to continue to discuss. And again, right now, that would show that year of GO being higher than normal. So I think we're going to have some decisions to make about that. Just probably don't have to decide that right now with the current CIP. Again, it's the plan for out there in '28. And then we can't, we'd be remiss if we didn't maybe pick the biggest project on the CIP, the water treatment facility improvements and the nutrient reduction. Had $125 million, as you know, under current contract for the design with Strand. I think the design alone will take 24 months, and then we'd be looking at construction in 28 to 30. And then just a reminder that the council, we are using some of our ARPA dollars for this project as well, because sewer improvements were eligible under ARPA. And then at some point, we will have to talk about, are we going to, sell sewer bonds to fund that much? As you all probably know, we've purposely, with some of our sewer rate increases, purposely been building up our cash reserve so we can buy down some of that, having to do as much debt as we need. So that should help as well in that. So again, that was just highlighting a few projects, but obviously we can entertain at the end questions about any project on the CIP. But one of the things we do, again, with the replacement debt is we look at, okay, over the 5 years, what would that impact property taxes? If everything stayed the same, our valuation stayed the same, we sold bonds at the same, sold them for the same length of time. And so you can see over 5 years, it's a 2.15% increase. So again, very small impact because of doing replacement debt. But I think we're also having to keep in mind about impacts of House File 718 and how is that going to impact? Is there anything in the future the state legislature might do in regards to other levies? The debt service levy right now is not impacted, but I guess you never know what might be the next levies they might talk about. So again, I think that's why the CIP is always important, to kind of have a plan and a tool of that we're always looking forward and what might be coming next. One of the other things I just, so again, review by council tonight, just next step. Formal public hearing on January 16th. But what I wanted to just mention is a couple things. We already talked about the Unidome, having that change in front of you. The other thing that kind of came in right at the after the fact too was, you'll see the other sheet was the First and Union proposal that's in there as well. So I know Director Schraggy's been working on that. You've heard some updates about that. So we would also propose that other sheet sitting in front of you, with that we would also add that on to the CIP. It doesn't affect general obligation funding. It will affect local option sales tax funding and some street construction funds. And so that would be our other proposed change is that sheet in front of you. So I just, again, we can take questions, but at the end, I think we're looking for then a motion to recommend to the approval to City Council, either as the CIP as presented or with amendments. Obviously, I've talked about 2 of them already tonight, but there may be others as well that we can discuss as well. And so with that, I'm just going to open it up to questions or about projects or anything else.
All right, thank you. Yes, Councilman Cruz.
Thank you. Director Rodenbeck, since the last time we issued debt, interest rates have gone up quite substantially. Do you have an idea where we're looking at?
Well, when we did these projections and the impact, we took 3%, selling bonds for 3%. Now, I'm nervous that that's wishful thinking maybe at this point, but I'm also hoping with our AAA bond rating, I'm hoping that, because you're right, last time we were selling bonds for, something under 2% last time, so.
So when do we go to market to bid this?
Well, usually we do the spring, and why we usually do the spring is we wait for the budget to get finished because we want to make sure that there's nothing that changes in the budget. You know, if people decide, you know, council decides they want to not sell as much GO and do fewer projects. So we usually tend to do it in that April, May kind of time frame. It doesn't have to be. It's just, again, we like to get through the budget first.
I was just curious if the Fed signals they might be lowering rates, they talk about it all the time. How much wiggle room month-wise do we have? Several months by fall or what?
Right, I think we can do, usually the only thing that's affecting us is whether we're having projects that we need the funding for, is usually why we're doing it.
Sure.
But, again, I think that's something, you're right, absolutely, we can watch and see what seems to better timing. You know, the unfortunate part is, you know, it's not that we can ever decide, hey, this week, let's put it on the next council meeting. As you know, it takes public hearings and it takes notices of 30 days and, you know, so the process itself is going to take 2 months anyway, but no, I think that's a good point.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions, concerns, anything that we need to discuss as far as possible change or amendments, so we know those things now and can work through that and get to a good spot? Yes, Mayor Loddick.
Thank you. Ron, quick question. Well, I guess this might be for you, Jen, too. I know we are looking at the 4.7 million for the TIF through the Pinnacle Prairie TIF. I know we had talked about looking to incentivize a new development in that area, and we were wondering if we would have enough in the TIF to be able to do that. Do we need to be looking at some of that 4.7 to be able to have that for working on some of the other incentivization out there, or do we have enough capacity to look at the roundabout project and what we would need to do that project?
So I think that's a little bit of what we talked about at goal setting, is what is the capacity in that particular TIF district. And once we get our valuations this year, then we can start to look at, okay, what's the valuation within that TIF district? What do we have for outstanding debt? And what do we have for committed projects? And then that would kind of be the area then that we'd have to look at. Because remember, if what was it, 31 that expired?
Sounds right, yeah.
It's, so the expiration date in that particular district is coming up as well.
Yep.
So we'll be bringing some type of proposal back to the council, letting you know what we do have for capacity there,
Okay.
or projected capacity.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilman Schultz.
Ron, this is probably pretty premature, but I'm going to ask you anyway to give us any information on the 57 and Union Road intersection. Is this just preliminary talk, or has there been some discussion on design, or where are we at?
So I think Director Schraggy's been working very closely with the DOT, and I think the preliminary talks are, yes, this is something that they'd like to move forward with as well. Now, they have a very similar project or process like we do, where they have to go through a capital projects 5-year planning, but indications from the district, or this is a project they'd like to move forward. But anything to add on that, Chase?
Nope, and then the only update to that would be their next step in their process is a February meeting to continue to try to move these improvements forward. So,
Thank you.
Quick
Yes,
question.
Councilman Cruz.
Also in regard to the type of improvements, short-term versus long-term, would we see the roundabout discussion where that's still on the table? And things like rumble strips can be done real quick, that kind of thing?
So a majority of what I'm going to refer to as short-term improvements are done. There's actually 2 other items, one being reflective tape that would go on the stop sign post to make the stop sign more visible at night. And then in addition to that, we're still talking to the district about rumble strips, and really it would depend on timing. Obviously, the draft sheet that's in front of you to be included in the CIP, depending on where the DOT would land about programming, whether it's in 26 or 29, we just wanted to ensure we had it in our 5-year program. Whether those move a few years or not, we're still waiting to hear from the district, and which will help us determine what other short-term improvements, because if we're going to start design work next summer, some of those improvements could hold off until the permanent improvements are installed. So,
Depending what the permanent improvement is. So there is a possibility of a roundabout.
That's what we actually have in the budget, if you, the sheet in front of you. So those have been the preliminary talks with them.
1,000.
Yes, sir.
So Ron, with that, just a follow-up for me, I won't hold you to.
Thank you. Any other questions, concerns regarding any of the items in the CPI or CIP or the proposed amendments?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilman Ganfield.
Jen, this one might be for you or maybe Stephanie, but on item 56 regarding the rental deconversion, I think we had cut some of that last year, but that's set at 100,000 for each year going forward. I'm concerned with some of the reading I've been doing that might be pricing out some of our affordable housing for some of our workforce. Is that something that we're seeing as a successful project to deconvert rentals to single-family homes? What's the major benefit to keeping that in our CIP?
Most years that we've had this program, we have not maximized the funding available. I think there was just one year where maybe we had 10 projects basically. Most years range around 3 to 4 projects, so it's not converting maybe as many as you might think. So the other point I might make to try to answer your question would be that we still do see a lot of other properties convert to rentals. So we kind of see things happening back and forth a little bit. This doesn't directly maybe answer everything, but that's the information I have for you.
Yeah, I think any follow-up would just be, I mean, sell me on the idea of keeping it in there. I'd like to see that Cedar Falls isn't averse to rentals. And so if we already have some, you know, it reminds me of a joke when somebody sees log trucks running in both directions on a road. You had logs, and you needed logs. Why didn't you just... So why are we adding rentals and deconverting rentals? Could we get rid of that $100,000 expenditure?
Well, I guess the adding rentals kind of comes into the property rights of an owner to do what they wish with the property. And if they want it to be a rental, there's a process to apply for that. And we're seeing still, you know, I quoted several years ago, our average about 10 a month. That's still kind of what we're seeing. We recently kind of looked at that number.
And I guess a direct answer would be, would it hurt us to remove that $100,000 in funding?
I guess that's up to the council, but like I said, I gave you the numbers. We're probably seeing around 3 or 4 a year and had 1 year where we had around 10 that used the program.
All right.
So if I might respond to that, because I remember, and I think that we've discussed that you attended the housing thing at the League of Cities thing. And I remember them talking about Iowa's aging housing stock. So I guess my thought on that is I get what you're saying, and I guess I get what the information that Director Sheets is offering. I think that I look at that money and what it's used for, and I'd love to see us maybe like work to maybe get to where more folks are incentivized to use it, because I feel like it in my mind helps improve our aging housing stock, and I also just see like, you know, you look at those houses, some of them that have been changed, and I feel like it's such a positive impact for the neighborhood, you know, because it is, it's exterior, isn't it?
That's what the city funding would do, but they
Right.
could do interior as well.
Sure. I understand what you're saying. I look at it as a way to help with our aging housing stock, because I think that's usually where it goes.
That makes sense. The value adds there. That makes sense.
Yes, Councilman Latta.
I know we had some conversation during goal setting about the potential economic benefit or lack thereof if we did put the extra 500,000 in with Dome and just our goal of overall trying to retain the state playoffs. Has there been similar conversation to look at what the potential economic benefit would be for our work with Birdsall Park if we were able to perhaps host, you know, some of these small youth baseball tournaments, et cetera?
I don't know of any. I don't know, Stephanie, if
We don't have any studies at this point. We have lost the ability to host a lot of that because they are not competitively sized fields anymore. They don't meet kind of the mark of what we see a lot of new facilities happening. So part of the question is that the type of facility we need to be? If there are other facilities, why compete with those? What is the market that we want to find? And so we're thinking that the Parks Master Plan will help inform a little bit about that, but we also have design dollars in for the Birdsall project, so that's where we'll spend some time really talking about what do we want to see happen with this park.
Thank you.
Any other questions, concerns regarding the CIP, items on it, needed amendments or things to talk through so we can get to a document that we're comfortable moving forward with? Okay. Any amendments that anybody needs besides the two that we've got in front of us for 57 in Union and for the 500,000 that we discussed at goal setting for the Unidome project, the additional 500,000 for fiscal year 2027. Any other concerns that we need to work through at this time? Yes, Councilman Cruz.
I guess I would just say that this is a tentative adoption because when the budget comes and we overspend and under, our revenue might be short, everything is fair game in here to be changed, so it's well
I agree.
understood.
Just last time
Okay.
we got to a spot where we didn't adopt it and it knocked us back. So I want us to be in a healthy spot where we don't set ourselves back. So if we need to make changes now, when we're sitting and we've got half hour left, let's get through it.
And I know we did, if I can, Madam Chair.
Yes.
We did get some of the numbers today to start figuring out some of what we'll have for a budget. So I think we'll be going through that process. If there's not enough for all this, we'll bring back some of those recommended things we might need to move.
Okay, well,
So motion.
I guess the motion that we need is the motion to recommend approval, the city council, the CIP as presented or as amended, and will include, unless someone has a problem with these.
Mr. Mayor,
amendments, but-
I'd like to make a motion to amend the CIP as presented and amended.
Okay, we got a motion. Second. Any further discussion, concerns?
Just for clarification, inclusive of both these items that we have.
I think that's
the-
what you meant.
Right, yep.
Presented and amended, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, well, with any, without any further questions, then I guess we need just a consensus, right? Okay, voice vote. Okay, so let's do a voice vote. Voice vote is all in favor, right? Okay, sorry. All in favor of the approval with the amendments, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Okay. And that is the only item on tonight's committee meeting. So with that, I will call this committee meeting adjourned, and we'll reconvene at 7 o'clock for the city council meeting. Thank you.